The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 12 different alien species sat around the massive circular table, each representative looking more serious than usual. The air felt thick with tension as Admiral stood up from her crystal chair. Was tall and elegant, her body made of living crystal that caught the light from the room's floating orbs. Her people, were known across the galaxy for their cold logic and perfect military strategies. When she spoke, her voice rang like beautiful bells, but her words carried the weight of death. "We have reached a decision about the human problem," she announced to the hall. Her crystalline fingers touched a control panel, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed the galaxy with thousands of bright dots marking human colonies, research stations, and military bases. Ambassador Wei sat alone at the human section of the table. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Unlike the other representatives who had advisors and guards, sat by herself with only a simple data pad in front of her. Admiral continued her speech. For the past 50 years, humanity has expanded across 200 star systems. Their methods are crude and violent. They use kinetic weapons that destroy instead of disable. They build military bases before schools. They terraform planets without asking the native life forms for permission. A murmur went around the table. The reptilian representative hissed his agreement. The gas-based ethereals flickered with colors that showed their displeasure. Even the peaceful flower people swayed their petal heads in disapproval. "The Council has tried to guide humanity toward a more civilized path," said. "We have offered them our technology, our wisdom, and our friendship. Yet they continue to act like barbarians from their ancient past." Wei listened without changing her expression. Her hands remained folded on the table, and she did not reach for her data pad to take notes like the other ambassadors usually did. "Therefore," Admiral announced, "the Galactic Council has voted. Humanity must withdraw from all contested systems immediately. You will restrict yourselves to a 50 light-year radius around your home system of Sol. You have 72 standard hours to begin this withdrawal." The holographic display changed to show a small sphere around Earth. It looked tiny compared to the vast areas that humans currently controlled. The other representatives nodded their approval at the reasonable size of the restriction zone. "If humanity refuses to comply," continued, "the Council will use force. We have assembled a fleet of 3,000 ships representing all member species. They are already positioned at key points around human space." She touched her control panel again, and the display showed the positions of the Council fleet. The ships were spread out like a net, ready to close around human territory. Each ship represented the best technology that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations could build. The Mechanical Collective's representative, a robot with glowing blue eyes, spoke in its electronic voice. "The fleet includes 200 dreadnoughts, 500 heavy cruisers, and over 2,000 support vessels. Human resistance would be futile and would only lead to unnecessary death." Wei finally moved. She reached for her data pad and looked at it for a moment. Then she set it down and looked up at Admiral. "I understand the Council's position," said in a quiet voice. "May I ask what will happen to human colonies in the restricted areas? Will civilians be allowed to evacuate safely?" "Of course," replied with what might have been surprise in her crystal voice. "The Council is not composed of monsters. We will allow reasonable time for civilian evacuation once military forces withdraw. And our research stations, our trade agreements with non-Council species. Research can continue within your designated area. Trade agreements will be reviewed by the Council to ensure they meet civilized standards." Wei nodded slowly. She stood up from her chair and looked around the table at each representative. Her eyes seemed to memorize every face, every detail of their appearance. "The human government will need time to discuss this ultimatum," she said. When do you require our official response? You have 12 hours to respond, Admiral announced. The 72-hour withdrawal period begins whether you agree or not. I see. Wei picked up her data pad and held it close to her chest. In that case, I believe I can give you humanity's response now. The entire hall fell silent. Even the ethereals stopped their constant flickering. Every eye, sensor, and detection organ focused on the small human woman. Humanity has heard the Council's ultimatum, Wei said in the same quiet voice she had used throughout the meeting. We understand that you view our expansion as a threat to galactic peace. We understand that our methods seem crude compared to your advanced civilizations. She paused and looked directly at Admiral. Humanity will comply with the Council's wishes, she said simply. The silence that followed was different from before. It was the silence of surprise, of confusion, of something that felt almost like disappointment. Several representatives leaned forward as if they had not heard correctly. You agree? Asked the Flower People representative, their petals rustling with confusion. We agree, Wei confirmed. Humanity will withdraw from all systems outside the 50 light-year radius. We will restrict our activities to the designated area. We have no desire for conflict with the Galactic Council. Admiral's crystal body seemed to dim slightly. You understand that this withdrawal must be complete. No hidden bases, no secret research stations, no military forces left behind. We understand completely, Wei replied. When humanity withdraws, we withdraw completely. She bowed slightly to the assembled representatives, a gesture of respect that seemed genuine rather than mocking. If there is nothing else, I should return to Earth immediately to begin organizing the withdrawal, said. Admiral looked around the table at the other representatives. They all seemed as surprised as she was by how easily this had gone. Very well, she said finally. The Council will monitor the withdrawal to ensure compliance. We hope this marks the beginning of a more peaceful relationship between humanity and the galactic community. Wei smiled for the first time during the entire meeting. It was a small, almost sad smile that did not quite reach her eyes. I am certain it will be the beginning of something new, she said. Then she walked out of the Great Hall, leaving behind a room full of alien representatives who were not quite sure why they felt like they had just made a terrible mistake. Commander Al of the fleet had expected to see panic. He had expected desperate human ships trying to escape with whatever they could carry. He had expected the chaos that always came when a weaker species was forced to abandon their territory. Instead, he watched through his ship's sensors as something completely different happened. The human colony of New Geneva sat on a planet that the Council wanted for its rich mineral deposits. Al's ships had surrounded the system, ready to enforce the withdrawal if the humans tried to resist. But as he watched, human transports moved between the planet and the orbital stations like they were following a carefully planned schedule. Status report, he hissed to his communications officer. The humans have not sent any distress calls, the officer replied, his forked tongue flicking nervously. No requests for help from Earth, no angry messages, they are simply leaving. Al stared at the display. Human cargo ships moved in perfect formation, loading equipment from the surface. Mining installations that had taken years to build were being dismantled with mechanical precision. Even the orbital defense platforms were being taken apart piece by piece. How long until they are gone? He asked. At their current rate, the system will be empty in 36 hours. Al had fought in 12 different wars during his military career. He had seen species fight to the last breath for far less valuable territory. Yet these humans were leaving behind billions of credits worth of infrastructure without even a complaint. Across human space, the same scene repeated itself on 200 different worlds. On the mining world of Hope, human engineers worked around the clock to pack up massive excavation equipment. Admiral herself had come to observe this withdrawal personally. She watched from her flagship as human ships loaded themselves with machinery that would have taken her people months to build. "They are being very thorough," noted her tactical officer. "Every piece of equipment, every computer core, every weapon system, nothing is being left behind." "Perhaps they hope to sell the equipment," mused. "Humans are known to be motivated by profit." But as she watched more closely, she realized something strange. The humans were not just taking valuable items. They were taking everything. Food synthesizers from the cafeterias, personal belongings from living quarters. Even the plants from the hydroponic gardens were being carefully packed into transport containers. Her tactical officer pointed to his display. "Admiral, they are also taking the power cores from the fusion reactors. Those units were designed to be permanent installations." Studied the readings. The power cores weighed thousands of tons each. Moving them would require specialized equipment and careful planning. Yet the humans had somehow brought the right tools to extract them safely. How did they know to bring heavy lifting equipment? She wondered aloud. The ultimatum was only given 3 days ago. On the research station of Deep Thought, Doctor of the Mechanical Collective was asking the same question. He had volunteered to observe the human evacuation because he was curious about their efficiency. The space station had been humanity's most advanced research facility outside of Sol system. It contained laboratories studying everything from quantum mechanics to alien biology. Doctor expected the evacuation to take months. Instead, he watched human scientists work with the same calm precision he had seen everywhere else. They packed delicate equipment into specially designed containers. They transferred terabytes of research data to portable storage units. They even took the experimental computers that had been built into the station's structure. Query: how are they removing integrated systems so quickly? He transmitted to the human evacuation coordinator. The coordinator, a tired-looking woman named Dr. Sarah, answered without stopping her work. "We designed all our installations with mobility in mind. Nothing we build is truly permanent." Doctor processed this information. Statement: this suggests the evacuation was planned in advance. Doctor paused in her packing and looked at him with a strange expression. "We always plan for everything," she said simply. Then she went back to work. The most confusing evacuation happened at the military base on Fortress Prime. General of the Unified Defense Force had brought his best ships to make sure the humans did not try to hide any weapons or secret technology. What he found instead made him question his understanding of human nature. The base's commander, Colonel Maria Santos, met him at the main entrance with a data pad containing complete inventories of everything on the base. She handed it to him without being asked. "Everything we're taking is listed there," she told him. "You're welcome to inspect any of our ships before they leave." General looked at the list. It included every weapon, every vehicle, every piece of technology on the base. But more than that, it included things like furniture, kitchen equipment, and even decorative plants. "Why are you taking the furniture?" he asked, genuinely confused. Colonel Santos smiled the same sad smile that Ambassador had shown at the council meeting. "Because it's ours," she said. "We built it, we used it, and we're not leaving it behind." General watched as human soldiers loaded everything from battle tanks to coffee makers onto their transport ships. They worked with military precision, but there was something else in their movements, something that looked almost like sadness. "You seem upset about leaving," he observed. "We are," Colonel Santos replied. "Some of my people have lived here for 20 years. This was their home." "Then why not fight? Why not resist the council's ultimatum?" Colonel Santos looked at him with eyes that seemed older than her face. "Because fighting would mean people die. Human people, council people, maybe innocent people. We don't want that." "But you are giving up everything you built." "No," she said quietly, "we're just taking it somewhere else." As the last human ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, the abandoned star systems fell silent. Council fleets moved in to claim the empty worlds, and what they found puzzled them even more than the evacuation itself. The humans had left behind only the basic infrastructure. Power grids still functioned, but the fusion reactors that powered them were gone. Buildings remained intact, but they were empty shells with all the useful equipment removed. Even the automated defense systems had been carefully disabled and taken away. It was as if the humans had taken the soul of each colony, while leaving behind only an empty body. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship looking down at New Geneva's main city. The buildings were all there, the roads were clear and the power was still on, but it felt like a ghost town. "They were very efficient," her tactical officer commented. "Too efficient," replied. She had expected anger, desperation, or at least some sign of the emotional chaos that came with losing everything you had worked to build. Instead, the humans had left quietly, taking everything they could carry and leaving behind only emptiness. For the first time since the ultimatum had been delivered, Admiral wondered if the Council had made the right choice. 6 months had passed since the humans completed their withdrawal, and the galaxy had never seemed more peaceful. Admiral stood in her new office on the planet that humans had called New Geneva. Through her window, she could see the bustling construction of a new crystal city rising from the plains. The Council had wasted no time claiming the abandoned human territories. Each species had taken the worlds that best suited their needs. The claimed the desert worlds with their rich mineral deposits. The flower people took the garden worlds with perfect growing conditions. The mechanical collective occupied the industrial planets with their massive manufacturing facilities. Promotion had come 3 months after the successful enforcement action. She was now Supreme Admiral of the Council Defense Force, and her first command had been to establish security in the new territories. It had been remarkably easy work. "Admiral," her aide announced through the crystal communication panel, "the quarterly expansion report is ready for your review." She activated her display and smiled at the numbers. Trade between Council species had increased by 40%. Resource production was up 60% thanks to the rich worlds they had claimed. Even the peaceful ethereals had established new research colonies in former human space. Her aide, a young named Ron, materialized in the room with a stack of data crystals. "The territorial governors have all reported successful integration of human infrastructure. The power grids, transportation systems, and basic manufacturing facilities have been adapted to our needs with minimal effort." "Any problems with the human technology?" asked. "None significant. Their designs were surprisingly compatible with our systems. If anything, their equipment was over-engineered for durability." Ron paused. "Though the xenobiology teams have found their technology choices curious." "How so?" "Human ships were designed with excessive redundancy, multiple backup systems for every critical function. Their buildings could withstand natural disasters far beyond what these planets experience. Even their personal equipment was built to last for decades of heavy use." Considered this information. Perhaps they simply lacked the sophistication to build more efficient systems. "Perhaps," Ron agreed, though his tone suggested doubt. On the research station that humans had called Deep Thought, Doctor was conducting his own investigation into human technology. The mechanical collective had claimed the station because of its advanced computer systems, but what they found was both impressive and puzzling. Doctor stood in the main laboratory, surrounded by human research equipment that his teams were still trying to understand. The humans had been working on projects that seemed far ahead of what the Council expected from such a primitive species. "Status report on the quantum mechanics laboratory," he requested from his assistant. "Troubling findings. the assistant replied in electronic tones. The humans were conducting experiments that our theoretical physicists consider advanced even by our standards. They were manipulating quantum fields in ways we have not seen before. Doctor processed this information. Were they close to any breakthroughs? All research data was removed during the evacuation. However, the equipment remaining suggests they were working on large-scale applications of quantum manipulation, possibly for industrial manufacturing or energy production. This was not the first strange discovery. In the biology labs, they had found evidence of genetic research far beyond what humans should have been capable of. In the physics department, there were traces of experiments involving exotic matter. Every field of study showed signs of advancement that did not match the Council's assessment of human capabilities. Recommendation: we should request permission to send observer teams to the human boundary zone, his assistant suggested. Doctor considered this. The Council had established a monitoring network around human space, but no ships were allowed to cross the boundary without special authorization. The humans had requested complete isolation during their adjustment period, and the Council had agreed. Doctor decided, the humans are complying with all restrictions. We have no reason to violate their privacy. But privately, he wondered what the humans were doing with all the advanced equipment they had taken with them. General was having similar thoughts as he walked through the former human military base on Fortress Prime. The Unified Defense Force had converted it into their sector command center, and the efficiency of human design had impressed everyone. The base's defensive positions were perfectly placed to control the entire star system. The communication arrays could reach across dozens of light years with crystal clarity. Even the simple things like barracks and supply depots were organized with mathematical precision. The humans may have been aggressive, his chief of staff commented, but they certainly knew how to build military installations. Nodded, but something bothered him. Have you noticed anything odd about the weapons they left behind? You mean the fact that they didn't leave any weapons behind at all? Exactly. They took everything. Every rifle, every ammunition casing, every piece of metal that could be used to study their weapons technology. His chief of staff looked confused. Isn't that normal for a military withdrawal? Normal species leave broken equipment behind. They abandon ammunition that's too heavy to carry. They forget spare parts in storage rooms, gestured around the empty armory. These humans took everything down to the last bolt and screw. Perhaps they were just thorough. Or perhaps they didn't want us to learn how their weapons really work, muttered. The first signs that something was wrong came from the deep space monitoring stations. Dr. Eth of the Ethereal Council was reviewing routine scanner data when she noticed unusual readings from the direction of human space. Energy signatures were appearing at the edge of sensor range. Large energy signatures. The readings suggested massive industrial activity, but the scale seemed impossible. She brought her concerns to the monthly Council security meeting. Admiral listened to her report with growing interest. How large are these energy readings? Asked. Equivalent to the total power output of a small star, Dr. Eth replied. But the readings are coming from systems that should only contain planets and asteroids. Could they be natural phenomena, solar flares, asteroid impacts? The patterns are too regular. Something is generating controlled energy releases on a schedule that repeats every 73 hours. Admiral considered this information. Are the humans violating the boundary restrictions? No direct evidence of that. All readings are coming from deep within their designated territory. The Security Council discussed the matter for several minutes before reaching a conclusion. The humans were probably just building new infrastructure to replace what they had lost during the withdrawal. Large construction projects would naturally generate significant energy signatures. The humans are contained within their boundary, Admiral declared. "As long as they stay within their designated area, their activities are not our concern." But as the meeting ended, several council members exchanged worried glances. The energy readings were not just large. They were growing larger every month. Doctor left the meeting with a request to increase monitoring of the human boundary zone. His request was approved, and he immediately dispatched automated probes to get better readings of whatever the humans were building. The probes never reported back. 3 months later, a second set of probes was sent. These were equipped with the most advanced sensors the mechanical collective could build. They were designed to transmit data continuously and retreat at the first sign of danger. The last transmission from Probe 77 Alpha was particularly disturbing, detecting massive artificial structures around target star, scale beyond calculation parameters, initiating emergency retreat protocol, unknown vessels approaching at. Then nothing. Admiral read the report in her office while looking out at the thriving city below. The sight of her people's crystal spires rising into the sky should have filled her with pride, but instead she felt a growing unease. What were the humans building in their isolation, and why did every attempt to find out end in silence? Doctor stared at his display screen until his optical sensors began to strain. The data made no sense, but he had checked it 17 times. Every calculation came back with the same impossible result. 1 year had passed since humanity's withdrawal, and the mechanical collective's deep space monitoring network had detected something that challenged everything they knew about physics and engineering. "Run the gravitational analysis again," he instructed his assistant. Analysis complete. Result unchanged. Gravitational anomalies detected in 7 star systems within human space. The mass signatures suggest artificial structures with combined mass equivalent to small planets. Doctor's logic circuits struggled to process this information. Building structures with planetary mass would require industrial capacity beyond anything the Council had ever imagined. It would take thousands of years using conventional methods. "How long would it take us to build something of equivalent mass?" he asked. "Using current collective construction methods, approximately 4,700 years for a single installation. The humans have built 7 of them in 12 months. His assistant's optical lights flickered with the electronic equivalent of confusion. "Affirmative. The math does not support this conclusion, yet the sensor data is consistent across all monitoring stations." Doctor transmitted a priority request to the Council Security Office. This was no longer just curiosity about human activities. This was a potential threat that required immediate investigation. Admiral received the report while reviewing the quarterly expansion statistics. The numbers were still impressive. Council control of former human territory had brought unprecedented prosperity to all member species. Trade was booming, resources were flowing, and conflicts between species had decreased significantly. But Doctor's data cast a dark shadow over all the good news. "You're certain about these measurements?" she asked during their emergency communication session. "The gravitational signatures are undeniable," Doctor replied. "Something with tremendous mass has been constructed in multiple human star systems. The energy readings suggest active industrial processes on a scale we have never seen before." Studied the star charts showing human space. The boundary zone had been quiet for an entire year. No human ships had been detected crossing the border. No communications had been intercepted. The humans had kept their promise to remain isolated. "Could they have received help from non-council species?" she asked. "Negative. Our monitoring network would have detected any large-scale movement of ships or materials across the boundary. Whatever the humans have built, they built it themselves using resources from within their designated territory." This was the most troubling part of the report. The resources required for such construction projects would strip mine entire solar systems. Yet there were no signs of environmental destruction in the human territory. The stars burned as brightly as ever, and the planets showed no evidence of large-scale mining operations. "I'm authorizing a reconnaissance mission," Admiral decided. "We need to know what's happening in there." 3 days later, Captain Nuz led a small squadron of the Council's most advanced scout ships toward the human boundary. Her mission was simple: cross into human space, gather intelligence on the mysterious construction projects, and return with detailed sensor data. Her ships were equipped with the latest stealth technology and could outrun anything in the known galaxy. If the humans tried to stop them, they could escape easily. If the humans had become hostile, the scouts could retreat and warn the Council. The squadron approached the boundary at the edge of what humans had called the 128 system. Captain Nuz expected to find empty space, with perhaps a few human patrol ships watching for intruders. Instead, her sensors detected something that made her question her own sanity. "Status report," she ordered her sensor officer. "Captain, I'm reading a structure around the star itself. It appears to be a ring, a solid ring of material completely encircling the star." Captain Nuz looked at her display. The structure was impossibly vast. A ring around an entire star would require more raw materials than existed in most solar systems. Could it be a sensor error? "Negative, Captain. Multiple sensors confirm the reading. The ring appears to be collecting and redirecting the star's energy output." Before Captain Nuz could respond, her communication officer turned to her with wide eyes. "Captain, we're being hailed." "By whom?" "Unknown. The signal is coming from the direction of the ring structure." On the main display, a human face appeared. It was a middle-aged man with calm eyes and a slight smile. He looked completely ordinary, which somehow made the situation more frightening. "Council Scout Squadron, this is Commander Jake of the Human Deep Space Monitoring Service. You are currently in violation of the boundary agreement established by the Galactic Council and the human government." Captain Nuz found her voice. "Commander, we are conducting a routine investigation under Council Security Authority." "I understand, Captain. However, our agreement specifies that no Council ships are permitted in human space without prior authorization. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to return to Council territory." "What is that structure around your star?" she asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Commander's smile widened slightly. "That's a ring, Captain. One of our more recent construction projects. We've found that direct stellar energy collection is much more efficient than traditional power sources." Captain Nuz felt her crystal body begin to resonate with shock. A ring around an entire star was theoretical technology that even the most advanced Council species considered impossible to build. "How did you construct something of that scale?" she asked. "Hard work and good planning," Commander replied. "Now, I really must insist that you return to Council space. We value our privacy during this adjustment period." Captain Nuz wanted to ask 1,000 more questions, but her tactical officer was pointing urgently at his display. Ships were approaching from the direction of the ring structure. Lots of ships. The sensor readings showed dozens of vessels moving toward the Council squadron. They were moving faster than should have been possible, and their energy signatures suggested technology far beyond anything in the Council database. "Captain," her tactical officer whispered, "their ships are reading as larger than our dreadnoughts." Captain Nuz made the only logical decision. "All ships, retreat to Council space immediately." As her squadron jumped to faster-than-light travel, she caught one last glimpse of the human construction. The ring around the star was not alone. Massive installations floated in space between planets. Fleets of ships moved in perfect formation between structures that dwarfed entire cities. The humans had not just built a few space stations during their year of isolation. They had transformed their entire territory into something unrecognizable. Captain Nuz arrived at Council headquarters 12 hours later with a report that sent shockwaves through the government. Admiral read her account 3 times before calling an emergency session of the full council. "You're certain about what you saw?" Admiral asked for the 5th time. "Absolutely certain," Captain Nuz replied. "The humans have constructed installations around multiple stars in that single system alone. Their industrial capacity appears to have increased by orders of magnitude." Doctor studied the sensor data from the Scout mission. The energy signatures match our long-range readings, but the implications are staggering. If humans can build rings in 12 months, their technology has advanced beyond anything we thought possible. The council chamber filled with worried murmurs. Representatives from all 12 species exchanged nervous glances. The species that had seemed so primitive just 1 year ago had apparently become the most technologically advanced civilization in the galaxy. "What does this mean for council security?" asked General. Admiral looked around the chamber at the faces of species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. For the first time in her career, she did not have a confident answer. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think we may have made a serious mistake." Outside the council chambers, automated systems recorded another disturbing piece of news. The merchant vessel, Prosperity's Dream, had failed to return from a routine trade mission. Their last known position was near the human boundary zone. Their final transmission was brief but terrifying. "Unknown massive structure detected. By the ancients, how is this possible? They're hailing us. Message incoming, they say. They say welcome to the new neighborhood." Then silence. The emergency council session was supposed to discuss the missing merchant vessel when every screen in the chamber suddenly flickered to life. Admiral looked up from her report to see a familiar human face appearing on the displays. Ambassador Wei looked exactly the same as she had 1 year ago. Her gray hair was neatly arranged, her expression was calm, and her eyes held that same quiet intelligence that had puzzled the council during their last meeting. But something was different. Behind her, instead of the simple office she had used before, there was a vast window showing space filled with structures that hurt the mind to look at. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," said in her polite voice, "I hope this message finds you well. I am transmitting this communication to inform you of some changes in human territorial requirements." Admiral tried to cut off the transmission, but her controls did not respond. The signal was somehow overriding every communication system in Council space simultaneously. This should have been technologically impossible. "First, I want to thank the Council for granting humanity the time and space we needed to complete our adjustment period. The year of isolation has been incredibly productive for us." Gestured toward the window behind her, and the view changed to show a star surrounded by a massive ring structure. But this was not the simple ring that Captain Nuz had reported. This was a complex network of interconnected platforms, shipyards, and energy collectors that completely enclosed the star. "As you can see, we have used our time wisely. This is one of our newer installations, which we call a stellar engineering platform. It allows us to collect and direct the complete energy output of a star for industrial purposes." Doctor's optical sensors focused on the display with desperate intensity. The structure was showing them was not just a ring. It was a complete sphere with additional manufacturing facilities built into its structure. The engineering required for such a project was beyond anything any council species had ever attempted. "You may be wondering how we accomplished such construction in only 12 months, continued with a slight smile. "The answer is quite simple. We learned to work together." The view changed again, showing dozens of star systems connected by streams of ships moving in perfect coordination. Every star had similar structures around it, and the space between systems was filled with installations that processed raw materials on an industrial scale beyond imagination. During our expansion phase, humans spread across many different worlds and developed many different specialties. Some became expert miners, others focused on manufacturing, and still others specialized in logistics and transportation. When we to our designated territory, we brought all of these skills together in one place. Admiral felt her crystal body begin to resonate with something that might have been fear. The view from s window showed industrial capacity that could supply the needs of the entire galaxy. If humans could build this much in 1 year, what could they build in 10 years? Or 100? We also learned some interesting things about efficiency during our isolation, continued. For example, when every member of a species works toward the same goal, productivity increases by factors that surprised even us. When you eliminate competition between different factions, you eliminate waste. When you share all knowledge freely, innovation happens much faster. The Flower People representative swayed nervously in their seat. "How many ships do they have?" they whispered, but the question carried in the silent chamber. As if it heard the question, the view changed to show massive shipyards surrounding one of the spheres. Ships were being constructed in assembly lines that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The ships themselves were larger than anything in the Council database, and they were being built at a rate of dozens per day. "Our current fleet consists of approximately 200,000 vessels of various classes," announced casually, as if discussing the weather. "We have found that maintaining a robust transportation network is essential for managing resources across multiple star systems." General tried to calculate the military implications and gave up. The largest Council fleet had never exceeded 5,000 ships. Humanity now had a fleet 40 times larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Of course, these are primarily cargo and construction vessels," continued. "Our military vessels are a separate category entirely." The display changed again, showing sleek ships that seemed to bend light around themselves. They moved through space with grace that suggested technology far beyond conventional propulsion systems. "But I did not contact you to discuss our industrial achievements," said, her tone becoming slightly more serious. "I called to inform you of a change in our territorial requirements." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the ethereals stopped their constant flickering. "After careful consideration, humanity has determined that our current 50 light-year restriction is insufficient for our needs. We will be expanding our territory to a 500 light-year radius around Sol, effective immediately." Admiral found her voice. That expansion would include over half of Council space. His expression did not change. "We are aware of the overlap with current Council territories. However, we believe this expansion is necessary for the continued development of human civilization." "You cannot simply claim Council worlds," Admiral protested. "Actually, we believe we can," replied gently. "The original boundary agreement was imposed by the Council without negotiation. Since humanity has now developed the capability to enforce our own territorial requirements, we are exercising the same right the Council claimed 1 year ago." The display changed to show a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. A sphere 500 light-years in radius appeared around human space, encompassing hundreds of Council worlds, including some of the most important government and industrial centers. "Naturally, we have no desire for unnecessary conflict," continued. "We are prepared to offer the same terms to Council species that the Council offered to us. You will have 72 standard hours to begin withdrawing from systems within our expanded territory. We will, of course, allow reasonable time for civilian evacuation." "This is madness," General shouted. "We will not abandon our worlds to human expansion." Looked directly at him through the screen. "General, I understand your frustration. Change is always difficult, But consider the alternative. The Council has approximately 5,000 ships total. Humanity has 200,000 cargo vessels alone, plus our military fleet, which I have not yet mentioned in detail. More importantly, our industrial capacity now exceeds the combined output of all Council species by a factor of several thousand. She paused to let this information sink in. We could, if we chose to, build more ships in the next month than the Council has built in the last century. Our energy production capabilities allow us to power industrial processes that would be impossible for any Council species. We have unified our entire civilization under a single cooperative goal, while the Council remains divided into 12 competing factions. Admiral felt the truth of words like ice in her crystal veins. Humanity had not just built impressive structures during their isolation. They had transformed themselves into something that made the Council look like children playing with toys. However, continued, humanity prefers peaceful solutions. We are willing to negotiate transition periods for Council evacuation. We can provide transportation assistance for species that need help relocating. We can even discuss limited territorial arrangements for worlds with special cultural significance. And if we refuse? Admiral asked, though she already knew the answer. Smile became sad again, the same expression she had worn during the original ultimatum meeting. Admiral, I hope that will not be necessary. The Council is composed of civilized species. I am confident you will make the rational choice. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. Admiral looked around at her fellow representatives. Some stared at blank screens in shock. Others were already reviewing star charts, calculating which worlds they might be able to evacuate in time. Doctor was the first to speak. We underestimated them completely. We gave them time, Admiral said quietly. We gave them motivation. We gave them unity. And we gave them isolation to work without interference. General slammed his fist on the table. We can still fight. We have the best military technology in the galaxy. No, Admiral said, studying the sensor data from Captain Nuzz's reconnaissance mission. We have the best military technology the galaxy had 1 year ago. The humans have something else entirely now. She stood up and looked around the chamber one final time. The Council will need to vote on humanity's territorial expansion, but I suspect we all know how that vote will go. The most advanced species in the galaxy were about to surrender to the species they had once considered primitive. The humans had retreated without making a noise. Now the Council understood exactly what they had given them time to become.